Hello, economics students. Today we're going to be looking at how substitutes and complements and price floors and price ceilings will impact our supply and demand model. These are some important concepts that we're going to be looking at, and it does somewhat complicate our supply and demand graphing model that we've been using. So pay close attention and let's get started. So what I'm showing you here is the supply and demand for corn flakes. Okay, and so we have all of our axes appropriately labeled, price and quantity, and our two lines are labeled as demand and supply appropriately, and we have our equilibrium point also labeled, supply and demand for corn flakes. Now, there's going to be some changes in the market. What should happen if the price of Post Raisin Bran goes up? There are some people who are buying Post Raisin Bran happily, another competitive product. You could consider Post Raisin Bran to be a substitute product for corn flakes. They're both cereals. They compete with each other. They're substitutes for one another. If the price of Post Raisin Bran goes up, there's going to be some people who decide they no longer want to buy Post Raisin Bran at the higher price. So what might they do? We're looking at the supply and demand here for corn flakes, not for Raisin Bran. So since Raisin Bran has raised their prices, some of those people will stop buying Raisin Bran and they will buy Kellogg's Corn Flakes instead. That means that the demand for corn flakes has increased, which is a rightward shift in the demand curve. And look what that's done. It has raised or increased our equilibrium price and quantity. So originally we were at E1. Now we're up here at E2. Notice what I've done here too. D1 is our original demand. D2 now I'm labeling as our new or second demand. And that has caused more people to buy Raisin Bran, which has caused the price of more people to buy corn flakes, keep me honest here. And that has caused the price of corn flakes to increase. If I were to draw a line to the pricing point here, I've gone from roughly where my cursor is there to roughly where I am here with the cursor. So the price of corn flakes has increased and the quantity sold has increased as well from here up to about here. So this is good news for the provider of corn flakes that Raisin Bran has raised their prices. Now let's look at another situation. Let's say that the price of milk goes up. Well, what's the relationship of milk to cereal? Most people pour milk on their cereal. If fewer people are going to buy milk because the milk price has increased, that means those people who put milk on cereal, they may not be buying as much cereal anymore because they don't want to pay the higher price for the complementary good, milk. So in this situation, if we were at D1 before, and now the price of milk goes up, people who are no longer going to buy milk at the higher price may stop buying corn flakes as well. So our demand from corn flakes goes from demand line number 1 to demand line number 3. And look what happens to the price. The price goes down. I can no longer command the same price for corn flakes, and the quantity sold has also gone down, based on not anything to do with corn flakes, but dealing with the complementary good for corn flakes. Conversely, of course, if the price of milk went down, more people would buy milk, and perhaps therefore more people would also buy cereal, which you pour milk on. So the price of substitute goods such as Raisin Bran versus corn flakes and complementary goods such as milk versus cereal does have an impact, definitely, when prices change on those substitutes or complementary goods. Okay, let's go on to price ceilings and price floors. We kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but we didn't necessarily in our last lesson use the term price ceiling or price floor, although the term is used, as you've probably noted or will soon note, in your textbook. A price ceiling is the maximum price for a product or a service. The price cannot be above that price ceiling. Typically, it is the government that would set a price ceiling. And when you have a price ceiling established that is lower than the equilibrium price, then you're going to have a shortage. And that's what happened in the example that I gave you in our last lesson when we talked about gasoline. And in 1979, there was a price ceiling placed on the price of gasoline, the retail price of gasoline at the pump. That price ceiling in 1979 was lower than the equilibrium price, and as a result you had a shortage of gasoline. That's when people were lining up at the gas stations at 6 a.m. hoping that they would be able to fill up their tank before the service station ran out of gasoline at 10 in the morning. So when you have a price ceiling that's set below equilibrium, you will have a shortage, which I have noted here. So as we do our graphing and you have a situation that should result in a shortage, such as this price ceiling, I would like you to go ahead and include the shortage line, which is the line that connects the supply curve and demand curve, and label that line with the word shortage, because that is what we're showing here, where the price is lower than equilibrium. Let's look at a price floor. A price floor is a minimum price for a product or a service. The price cannot be below the price floor. You sometimes will see this in agricultural goods. A lot of governments feel that it's a good policy to ensure the survivability of the family farm. A lot of family farmers may not be able to make a profit based on the market price of the product that they are growing, such as wheat or milk. So the government might set a price floor saying that, hey, we are not going to allow milk to be sold below this price, or we're definitely going to ensure that the people who are producing that product can survive and make a profit. So we're going to establish a price floor. When you do that and that price floor is above the equilibrium price, you will get a surplus, which means that the demand for the product at that higher price, the quantity demanded will be lower than the quantity supplied at that higher price. And this does happen in agricultural goods fairly frequently. Oftentimes the way that is addressed is the government will take that surplus and use that for things such as food pantries or something like that, where food is given away. But there have been situations as well where the surplus is simply destroyed, which is really tragic when you think about it. When we have a world where hunger exists, we want to ensure that food does not get wasted and destroyed. So that's a price floor. Now, here's a little key to remember how a price floor and price ceiling are reflected on a graph. Okay, when the price floor or price ceiling results in a surplus or shortage, you know, if you think of a floor, you think of a floor being down low. We stand on the floor. It's the lowest point in the room. But it's reflected oppositely on the graph. When you have a price floor, it's high up. It's above the equilibrium. So that relationship to what you think of as a floor is opposite in the graph of how you would depict it. It's going to show up higher than equilibrium when it's a price floor. And if we go back to our price ceiling, in the price ceiling, the ceiling is the highest place in the room, but when the ceiling results in a shortage, it's going to be low on the graph. So kind of keep that in mind. Graphically, it's sort of counterintuitive. It doesn't look the way you would think. A price ceiling is down low because the ceilings that result in shortages, and a price floor is up high. Even though you consider a floor being low, it results in a surplus, which is above equilibrium. That's sort of the key I use, to that opposite relationship. A price floor is reflected high on the graph. A price ceiling is reflected low on the graph. And with that, we're done with this quick lesson. Check Canvas and see if you have an assignment.